is the Word of God. Which version? Don't rush me on this. Every Sunday we read from this in church, and the liturgist, when they're finished, always says, "The Word of God for all people."
Thanks be to God.
And everybody says, "Thanks be to God."
Thanks be to God.
I'm going to pose a primary question as we start this series. How do we know this is the Word of God?
The Bible tells us so.
Who says that what's in this is really truly the Word of God? How was it decided that this should be the Word of God? You mean to tell me that as we read the Bible, that these are actually the words that God spoke? How do we know that what we're reading here? Come on in, Shay.
Faith.
Jesus never once stood up and said, "I repudiate what was written in the Scriptures." He always said, I didn't come to change.
That's right.
Can't think of
The
what
word, but to increase the word.
Yeah, to fulfill.
Fulfillment, yeah. Well, this is the basic premise that we're going to operate on for the next several weeks as we examine the Scriptures, both the Old Testament and the New Testament, and try to clarify ourselves on exactly what is the Word of God and how does it speak to us through this book. So, in order to begin, I'm going to start with this. If you are a student of the Bible, if you study the Bible, if you read the Bible, it is inevitable that sooner or later you're going to have some questions about what you're reading and about what the Bible presents. Sometimes your questions are actually doubts. Sometimes your questions are concerns. But everybody reaches the point where they have some issues with or questions about the Scriptures that they're reading. So what we're going to try to do this morning is to list a number of concerns that are typical, that a lot of people have, that a lot of people wonder about or ask questions about. And I'm going to give each one of you an opportunity to respond to each and every one of these.
Are you going to use your new pen?
I'm going to use my new everything. Now remember, what we're going to do here is we're going to go through a whole series. I've got 10 of them. 10 concerns that I have when I read the Bible that cause me to question what I'm reading. So we're going to take these one at a time. Here's the first one.
Looks like he came from education.
This is why he likes it, has a board in it to write on.
First time.
It was so exciting.
This is the very first issue. The Old Testament versus the New Testament God. A lot of people have a problem with this. And it's been a question that has been asked repeatedly through the centuries, starting clear back with the Gnostics. The God of the Old Testament is pictured frequently as an angry, vengeful, harsh, even petty God. The God of the New Testament, Jesus pictures as a loving, compassionate, caring, kind God. So people say, well, you know what? Here's the answer to that question. The God of the Old Testament is an entirely different God than the God of the New Testament. They're two different gods. They have to be. How do you reconcile the fact that the New Testament and the Old Testament picture God in such a different way? Now listen, folks. If the Bible, if this is truly the Word of God, and God is telling us that He's two different kinds of gods, how do we deal with that issue? What is really the character and personality of the true God that we believe in? I mean, in the Old Testament, this God orders the Israelites to kill homosexuals. He orders the Israelites kill children who curse their parents. He orders the Israelites to kill people who don't observe the Sabbath. Is that the same God we're talking about here in the New Testament?
Is that been, printed and read
Uh,
in the Old Testament?
no.
Well, there's your answer.
So, this is the first issue that people struggle with. And what I want is responses from you. How do you feel about this particular issue? What's your observations about this particular issue?
Well, I've always thought because Jesus said that he came to change the law, that he was, in some respects, changing the Old Testament people's concept of God, that he was such a vengeful, unkind murderer, and that he's trying to tell them that is not what God was like, because Jesus came to show us what God was like. There was nobody before that to show us.
I think it's the same time. Because I think if you read the whole New Testament, not just the book of Moses, and read through, especially Isaiah and the minor prophets, you're going to see that their God is a forgiving and merciful God.
Or the Psalms?
The Psalms, yeah.
But the Psalms, a lot of times it's like, you know, it sounds all beautiful and wonderful, and then at the very end it's like, oh God, kill my enemies, slash them, you know, I mean, it really does.
Well, don't people do that today? I mean, that's
We try not to, but yes, we do.
Well, yeah, people do that today, but what we're talking about is this the Word of God or not? Is that how God describes himself? Keep going.
I believe a lot that it's unknowledgeable attempts to take 3,000-year-old language and put it in words of today and say this is what these words mean. Because if you go back to the Greek and think about the Greek that was written, perhaps the Hebrew, I don't, as well, you know that Greek doesn't have any punctuation, doesn't have any capital letters. It's just, the words are just written in a string. And you have to be totally conversant with the times to make phrases out of those words. And that's why all of these different translations are so different. Because the different translators divided the words up separately into different phrases to mean different things. And you can study that a lot with the literature we have out now that's pointing out all of these differences. I don't believe that we know. It's like, for me, on the crucifixion, the word for hand in Greek means your arm from your elbow down. Okay, when we talk about where the nails were. You know, most people understand you can't put nails through the hand, our hand, because there won't hold. They have to go through the wrist, and that's what the Romans did, to create a way to hold you and make it extraordinarily painful. So I don't believe that, and the farther we get away from language and the new language that we develop on a daily basis, I think it's very difficult to know that what we are translating as kill means kill. It's like words for love. You've dealt with that, the 3 different words for love, the different words for murder. Okay, God says, thou shalt not kill, but what he means, I believe, is murder. Because you get this when you get the religious argument about capital punishment. God says clearly it's up to society or administrations to take care of the bad guys, to just kill them, okay? But he looks at that totally different than the act of murder, where you go out and murder somebody who's innocent.
Thank you. Of 10 different points, Rick has just covered 3, 4, 7, 9, and 10. To get back to just this, there are Christians today who have a problem with this Old Testament God and New Testament God. The Old Testament God is the God of the Jews. The New Testament God is the God of the Christians in their mind. And the way they resolve that problem is they just say, we're the Old Testament and we're just fine. You can't do that. But there has to be reasons why we have this different picturing of God in the Old and New Testament. And that's one of the things we're going to address ourselves to as we move along in the next few weeks. Yeah?
I think part of it is how literal you want to take things. And we're having that trouble today. But we have the trouble with any kind of language. Do you take every word and parse that word, or every sentence, parse that sentence, and take a very literal, exact translation, or you take a more, this is the thought, this is the idea, this is the concept, and understand that. To say that, particularly in the New Testament, because I don't know how the Old Testament exactly was written, because it seems like they were writing things as they went, perhaps, more than the New Testament, which was clearly written years after Jesus died. To say that every word is an exact word, quote, which is done from memory. I don't think anybody had tape recorders. To say that those words are exact. That's why there's difference in different books.
Let's see now, you just covered items 6 and 5.
Well, so talking about the interpretation of God, to me, it's how literal you want to take those interpretations.
Right. And so what it boils down to is an issue that some other people have with this, and the issue is, well, then this is not really God's description of God. What it really is people's attempt to describe what they think God is. So how far away is that from this being truly God's Word? I'm pointing all this out, guys. I'm just trying to say there are a lot of issues that people have, and over the next 8 or 10 weeks, whatever it is, we're going to try and resolve those issues. But we've got to start out by knowing what the issues are. Yeah, David.
And I think we have to remember too, he was talking to a different audience at that time, and they were forming a community, and there were a lot of other practices in the Mediterranean area that were actually pretty harsh. I mean, if you look at the Old Testament, it's a little bit rough on it.
Pretty bloody.
You just look around at the other Mediterranean areas, and this was practically flower child, type stuff.
If you made a true movie today of the Old Testament, it would have to be rated R for no other reason than the violence. Yeah, Art.
What about the thought that the Bible is the history of the two covenants God made with us? First covenant, second covenant, and that's the way it came out. One God,
Right.
two deals.
I think that's chapter 3 in the book. I just don't know for sure. Okay.
Who says this something?
We're doing fine, but I do have one comment I want to make. I get kind of tired listening to just the men talking here. I'd like to hear the women say some things from time to time.
I spoke,
Well, Linda's the only one that
but I always
talks
talk.
about it.
I always talk. No, he doesn't hear me at all. No, he doesn't hear me at all.
Bruce, you had a comment.
Yeah, the thing that strikes me is that you're talking about the assumption, the assertion is that the Bible is the Word of God, and we're debating about whether or not it is or not. It is not the Word of God to a Buddhist. It is not the Word of God to a Sikh. It is not the Word of God to many religions. The assertion is, from a Christian point of view or a Judaist point of view, that it is. So we're limited as to a belief system. And to me, the Bible is...
Unless we're right and everybody else is wrong.
We are.
Yeah, but we're still limited to that. It's still limited to our belief system. And to me, the Bible is a collection, is documentation of how a belief system, a human belief system, is documented through time. And it is our belief system and how we interact with the supernatural in our belief system. And to me, the Bible, when I read it, and we took the disciple Bible study, which is 35 weeks, and what I walked away with the impression that there's nothing that we're doing in today's world that hasn't been done in that Bible. The Bible's already done it. And you can find betrayal, you can find it all in there.
This is a totally human book. It
That's
doesn't
right.
pull any punches at all, it tells it like it is.
Yep. And there are solutions that have been sought for in that book,
Right.
in a belief system, and the belief systems change. And so there was a documentation of a belief system that lasted for a longer period of time than the newer belief system which Jesus brought. And it all started when Jesus was born. And so I'm comfortable with all of that because it's a lesson for
It's
us.
real life.
Yeah, and it's a lesson. You can find yourself in that Bible, and you can find a solution for yourself in there.
Yep. Okay, let's move along. We got 10 of these to go through. We ain't gonna make it today. But here's number 2. This is another reason or conflict or whatever that caused a lot of people to question the validity of the Bible.
Oh, okay.
I'll start the discussion out by saying this. If this is the Word of God, and if God is the creator of the universe, then why has God presented us with a totally phony description of the creation if compared to the facts of science? How do we resolve this problem? And for a lot of people, it's enough to turn them off completely. Yeah.
And we still don't actually know the story of creation. We're down to the Higgs boson. There are steps that you need before that. And if God
Down to the
said,
boson.
Adam, I want to tell you about the Higgs boson. Well, they lost him right there.
Yeah,
So,
right. Go ahead, Rick.
Well, the thing is that, there wasn't any possibility for, I don't know how Moses learned of the creation from what he wrote. But he had limited knowledge. I mean, there isn't any point in trying to start talking to him about cosmology or something. I think I forgot where I was going.
Oh, you're getting old too.
I suppose. Anyway. My thought is that science has and continues yearly to find things that points references in the Bible for that specific thing that people doubted. And there was something large this last year in that, but I don't remember what it was. What bothers me is, like, when I was in elementary school, which was a little over a century ago, we came out of a primordial ooze, right? That was basic, ammonia-based and all that kind of stuff. And by the time my oldest son got to college, that was completely debunked because it couldn't have been a basic system at the time. It had to be an oxidizing system. And now what I hear anymore is we had to come from Mars, or it wasn't possible for life to generate on the Earth. It had to come from outer space.
Brought by comets or asteroids.
So what I believe is my own personal, absolutely personal, is man is really stupid. And it's only because every time we gain a little bit of knowledge, we think we're the smartest thing around. But we have such little knowledge. If you look at if you just start looking through the centuries and what we've done, what we've gained, and then start trying to think about where we might be going, and you can see that the way technology is moving today, we're infants. So there isn't any way to say that we know much.
Yes, Barbara.
I think we're gonna have to take Genesis by faith. When you see a sunset or a sunrise or a sun on the mountain, that can't be science. It cannot be science. Genesis is real.
I think Genesis is a story of creation written at that time with those people. But the problem with science is that people, you mention the word evolution and they go crazy. All evolution means is change. And the story is lovely, and if you believe it as it is, that's fine with me. But I think it was to say that God did create the heavens and earth. If he is God, he certainly did that. I don't know how.
Okay, so what you're saying is that the Genesis story of creation was an attempt by people of that time with their limited knowledge, which was far more limited than our knowledge, to describe how things came
How
to
everything
be.
came about, right.
And its basic premise was that there is a God who was behind
It's all,
everything.
that's what I
Right.
believe.
Yeah.
I don't know how it
Okay.
happened, but-
Even Einstein said, finally, he said, the universe is too perfect to be accidental.
Dave,
That's what they say about amino acids. I mean, that's what they say about the DNA, right?
Yeah.
DNA is too perfect, it cannot be accidental.
Dave.
According to some of the things that I've read, the Jews did not actually have a creation story for quite a while in terms of their development. And they just borrowed something from Zoroastrianism at the time. This is a far more believable story than the dog follows the moon at night and then shoots the sun in the morning, which is one of the more popular creation stories of the time. And because then you have to answer so many other questions.
Well, see, people get really hung up on this kind of thing. We of course know of our friends, the Jehovah's Witnesses, for example, who continue to believe that the world was created in exactly 7 24-hour days, that the universe is only, 6,000 some odd years old, or whatever the case may be. And they continue to believe that in the face of all scientific facts and present-day knowledge to the contrary. So what this boils down to is a very important issue for every one of us, okay? We have a certain belief. It's a belief that we were taught when we were children. It's a belief that we grew up with as we got older. And as life goes on, we reach the point, all of a sudden, down here, where we encountered very, very realistic information to the contrary. And we get real upset. Because this information here, okay, is completely in opposition to what we believe. All this stuff. So we're confronted with a decision. Number one, this is your right. You can decide to completely ignore all the information that comes from what you believe, and in other words, you can take this reality and you can change it and pervert it back around to fit your belief. Or you can change your belief to conform to the new reality. It's your decision. Everybody makes that decision, and people go both ways. Now, one more thing let me say, and then I'll let you back in. Let's just say, for the sake of arguing, that this new reality right here, okay? Let's just say that that is real. Unquestionably the truth. And here you are confronted with this truth, okay? So, you say to yourself, well, in order for me to change my belief and accept this truth, this is scary. I'm going to have to completely leave my safe turf and my comfort zone, and I'm going to have to step out there and do a whole new thing. And it's terrifying. It makes me feel insecure. It causes me to lose the foundation that I've been standing on all my life. So I can either go ahead with that, or I can continue to say no. In the face of everything else, this is not real, no matter what everybody says to the contrary. In which case, now remember, we're theoretically saying that this was, in fact, true. Okay? So, in that case, I would say to this person, it is your right to stand on what you believe all your life. If you insist on believing in a lie, go ahead and believe it. For example, I don't want to badmouth anybody, but let's just take the Mormon Church. Okay? I personally believe that Joseph Smith was a false prophet. Yep. I personally believe that the Mormon Church is basically a lie, an untruth. People who insist on staying with that belief no matter what, to the contrary. And there are people, you could confront them with Jesus Christ himself, who would tell them otherwise, and they would refuse to let go of what they have believed. So, all I'm saying is that this issue is the second big issue that caused people some real concern. Now, Dave, you had a comment. You're next.
Several years ago, Joyce Nalpagana and I went to a 3-day seminar, Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday, presented by one of the leading authors and authority on the Genesis creation theory. And there was a group of about 30 of us there. What surprised me most was that I'd say almost all of them were under 40, and that probably a third were from the Nellis Air Force Base area. And when they go through the thing, and we were there just to try to understand it, not to in any way engage, funky. They have a sense of coherence in it that if you choose to believe, there's a foundation there to work with, and it's something you can feel very comfortable with, if that's your choice.
Scott, I think again, it's the literal. How literal do you want to take it? What's a day mean? I know in 8th grade science class, when I got an answer wrong on a test having to do with when the land was formed, I was able to go in with my Bible and say, the teacher, Genesis says, and she says, well, I'll give you credit. So it just depends on how you want to believe.
Mention the word.
Right.
Well, now, let me add one more comment to this before we move on to the third concern that people do have. This is the Bible, the Word of God. This, in Genesis, gives us the story of creation. Use your imagination here. Over in this hand, I have a book entitled The Origin of Species, written by Charles Darwin. And it presents to us the story of evolution. So, we have here and here two diametrically opposed concepts. Okay? So people say, well, it's obvious. What you have to do is you accept the story here in Genesis and you toss out the story of evolution. Or If you're going to accept the story of evolution, then you have to toss out the Bible. Just a minute now. Not so. I have a book here written by a pastor from the Church of Christ. It is called Thank God for Evolution. You see, it's Genesis and science, they can easily be resolved. They can easily be resolved.
I think so.
The problem is that people are trying to use Genesis as if it were a science textbook. You can't do that. It's not a science textbook. And people are trying to use science textbooks as a spiritual guide. Well, you can't do that either. They are two diametrically opposed things in that way. But both religion and science are after the same thing.
Right.
They're both after truth. Where is the truth? Well, like Rick said, we're stupid. We're humans. We don't really know where all the truth is. We continue to search for the truth. We continue to look for the truth. And you can find just as much truth in the Bible as you can in Darwin's Origin of Species or in this book by Michael Dowd called Thank God for Evolution. So, anyway, that's another concern that people have. We're going to have to quit here very soon. But I did want to at least put number 3 on the board so you can be thinking about this when we get back together next week. Good gosh, it's going to take us 3 weeks just to get through my initial 10 introductions.
That's okay, we're slow.
Okay, that's all right.
Well, the men are stupid, that's what Rick said.
Too many men talking.
Can't get anywhere.
Now we're jumping here for this particular item to the New Testament. And we're talking about the fact that different Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, often disagree on certain points. And so people say, well, shoot, obviously, with all this disagreement going on, the people who wrote the Gospels don't know what they're talking about. They didn't do their research. They didn't get things straight. As a matter of fact, some critics go as far as to say that disagreements in the Gospel about the life of Jesus Christ prove that Jesus never even existed. He wasn't real. He was concocted. He was made up by these different writers, and they never all got it together right. And that problem is another issue that people have trouble with. Scott, we got to break it real quick.
No, I just like it to explain it this way, harmony of the gospel.
Yes, well, there's also a book out that compares the Gospels and shows how much agreement there is, too. The people that are on the negative side of things, that's all. That's all Christians trying to make it look right.
I had another point I wanted to make on Genesis versus science, and that was before you showed that book, which I haven't read, but I'm going to. Who says God didn't make all this happen the way it's happened as we learn more and more? Who says we don't have a supreme being that is making things happen the way they're happening? As the way the earth was formed, the way evolution occurred, the way things occurred.
Well, see, in my mind, it doesn't make any difference to me whether the world, the universe was created in 7 days or 12.5 billion years.
There's no conflict.
The important thing is that there is a God behind it all who controls and does what he does.
Yeah, I've never seen conflict between the two. I never understood all the argument because Genesis is a way of explaining what God did and what is doing. Science explains how. And that'll never end.
In Genesis, what does God do first?
Create the heavens and the earth.
Before that,
Big Bang.
light.
And that's the
Big Bang.
And that's what science says is, you know, the start of it all, when
Yep.
there was life. And then the Genesis account goes on to describe, first there was life in the sea, and then it moved on to land, and the last thing created was mankind. And that same sequence is the same sequence that evolution presents. I mean, you know, you just have to deal with things, well, I'm gonna quit
We
there.
can't take anymore.
That's enough for one.